shoot for the stars and land on the moon, right? Be bold, be bold, be bold. Try and have a vision. Have a vision and pursue that vision. Be realistic at the same time. You're not going to change the world in one day, and you're not going to change it alone. So be realistic. Make sure you have people around you that can help you, both on a personal level but also professionally. And surround yourself with people that can help you avoid the mistakes that they have done. You're going to do your own mistakes anyway, but still try to learn from the experience of others. That's about it. It's all about getting the right people.
Good morning. Today on the BCI Podcast, we are joined by Dr. Christian Homsy, the founder CEO of Capstan Therapeutics, a company at the forefront of transforming medicine through in vivo precision engineering of cells. With a career that bridges clinical expertise, entrepreneurship, and biotech leadership, Christian has been instrumental in launching and guiding innovative ventures that push the boundaries of what's possible in therapeutic development. At Capstan, Christian helped lay the foundation for a bold approach, combining the power of cell therapy with the precision of genetic medicine to target a wide range of diseases. Capstan's core technology, targeted lipid nanoparticles, enables the precise engineering or ablation of pathogenic cells inside the body, representing a major leap in scalable, controllable therapies. Christian, it's a pleasure to have you on the BCI podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure to be here.
Amazing. So we'll dig deep into your career, which is spanning for several years. What were you like a child? Tell us more about your childhood.
I was a very curious kid and maybe a bit disruptive in my environment because I was always very curious and pushing a bit the boundaries a bit too far. I wasn't a very good student, to be frank, at the beginning. I was pretty much on the lazy side of things, but progressed through my childhood and school years. Then I encountered a teacher that started giving me some interest for studying, and that changed my life. And I became from pretty much the last one in the class to the first one in the class in a couple of years. And there it is. I grew up in Lebanon. This is where I did my primary school. And then during the war there, I moved back to Belgium. I moved to Belgium, where I continued my medical school.
Fantastic. But when was it clear that, you would like to pursue medicine and not something else?
So I'm a single child, and I read a lot. So I always read a lot, and I still read a lot. And it's basically through readings through, for example, a book on Dr. Cody and Dr. Barnard in the first cardiac transplant, and then reading a famous French hematologist, also very well known. So all this basically shaped it, and that was during the early years. And then, of course, during the war, all the things you see there guides you towards it. But I always had a strive to work mostly on children diseases and stuff like that. But it's basically started very young.
Very nice. Amazing. And you have been very transformational in terms of physician. You did not have the classical pathway, right? Like you were a medicine professional, and then you ventured into biotech and entrepreneurship. So tell us more about how this transition came in place.
So I as I said, I started medicine in Lebanon, and then I continued medicine in Belgium. And when I got here, I thought that my career was going to be in medicine, so I continued there. Towards the end of my medicine school years, where I knew a bit what I wanted to do, I wanted to go into congenital cardiac surgery. That was my goal, if you want. And then I started that. At that time, there wasn't a training for that. That was a long time ago. There wasn't training for that in Belgium. So I moved to the US, Harvard Medical School, to Boston Children's Hospital and stuff like that to try to get my first years of training. And unfortunately, after a couple of years, I couldn't continue there because I couldn't get a visa to stay as a student, if you want. It was Lebanese at the time. I wasn't Belgian, which made things a bit more complicated. So I came back to Belgium. I pursued a surgical training, but especially in orthopedic, that regular medical practice where you spend hours and hours under the microscope repairing nerves and in a hand or whatever, and then that became too boring. So at the end of that training and a couple of years of practice, I decided to move to entrepreneurship. Not to entrepreneurship, to business actually. I did an MBA in Switzerland at IMD.
Wow.
And
So it's very interesting journey, and sorry to kind of interrupt, Christian, because I'm like very excited in this. Already the things that you mentioned. Number one, you said you had visa issues. Number two, you said you had this, you had Lebanese roots, and then that's where I think you were born in Netherlands, right? Not in Lebanon.
No, I was born in Egypt.
In Egypt. So tell us more about your roots, how the whole journey became, and I'm just interested, very curious, because I haven't read about this.
So
Yes.
my parents are of Lebanese origin, both of them. I probably 150, 200 years ago, their families moved from Lebanon to Egypt because there was that war between the Ottoman Empire and the Druze and the Christians and stuff like that. So they fled. There was starvation. So that my ancestors fled from Lebanon to Egypt and then lived there for a couple of generations. I was born there, and then came about the Nasser revolution, the revolution of in Egypt, 1954, and I was born in 1958. And a few years later, my father, basically as a Christian in a Muslim country at the time that was very nationalistic and of Lebanese origin, businesses were nationalized by the Egyptian government. So we fled back to Lebanon, to our roots. And that's where it started. That's where I am. That's why I am basically Lebanese more than anything else.
Fantastic. So, but your childhood was more in Netherlands, right? It was your parents whose childhood was in Egypt, and
no, my childhood was in Lebanon, never in Netherlands. My childhood was in Lebanon until I was 21 years old. Then I moved to Belgium.
Wow. So your schooling and everything actually happened in Lebanon and not in Netherlands.
Correct.
So how easy was, I mean, this leads to so many other questions, Christian, because, at 21, it's not easy to adapt to a new culture, to a new language and things like that. So how was this adaptation taking place?
Well, I mean, it was war in Lebanon at the time. So if I wanted to continue doing studies, I had to move out. And the university I was in Lebanon, doing med school, had ties to a university here in Belgium. So it was a natural transition for me to come to this university in Belgium, although I had to start over, not completely, but a couple of years. And I I continued my medical school here at Université Catholique de Louvain, which is one of the oldest universities in Europe. And so was it easy? I mean, it wasn't. Of course, any change is challenging. Any change is a fight, right? You have to adapt. You have to integrate into a new environment. But Belgium was welcoming. Frankly, I never felt any kind of pushback from the society here. The university was great. The years were great, and of course, I had to work and study at the same time to be able to live. But it was great years.
Amazing. No, amazing. Because, I read a few things about you, but never could kind of find this on the internet. So this is something that is exciting to me. All right. So you were mentioning that, after you were in Harvard, you were kind of bored with your routine things, right? Like you were doing the same thing again and again.
I came back to Belgium. After Harvard because I couldn't get the visa. So,
okay.
And then I became pretty bored in what I was doing. Yeah.
And then you thought of doing an MBA, because this is not the most sought after careers, especially for medical professionals, right? So you went to IMD Lausanne, which is actually also one of the best business schools in Europe. So tell us more about, because your classmates, did you have any medical professionals as classmates, or it was totally a new?
No, I was the only one. I was there, but it's a small class. It's 70 people at IMD. It's small MBA classes, designed more for people that have already professional experience. So it's not people getting out of university that get that MBA. And I was the odd one. But you build incredible ties to the community there. and we still see each other quite often. I'm going to Australia this fall for the 35 years reunion. So it's still a very tight network, but it's, that's what IMD is good about, is bringing very different profiles into a class and making the experiences mix. So I could bring something that other people didn't have. And of course, I learned a lot from the other people that had that business experience that I didn't have.
Fantastic. No, I'm very aware of IMD because I had some friends who did their MBA from there as well. And that leads to another question, because most of the people who actually land up in IMD, they're like also driven by, like a corporate job, like a consulting gig or things like that. So what was your motivation? Like, you were very clear that you want to start a business or become an
No,
entrepreneur, or you just went there because you wanted to change your career?
I wanted to change my career. I didn't go there to become an entrepreneur. I went there to be able to join a pharmaceutical or medical device company. Actually, I was more interested in medical devices at the time. A medical device company, so I could add to my medical training and bring something that very few people had at the time. So this both the combination of medicine and business trainings, business education. So I joined at the time when I finished the MBA, when I graduated, I joined Eli Lilly medical device division, which later on became Guidant. So, and I had, of course, my father is an entrepreneur, so I always had that worm somewhere in my brain. No, I was very comfortable working in a large company, and frankly, also those were very, very formative years for me. Eli Lilly and the culture transferred between Eli Lilly and Guidant, which was a medical device that was spun out of Lilly. The culture of training people, of promoting people, of giving more than just basic training, giving values, and can't say how grateful I am for the years I spent there as well, because they were very formative for me. And again, someone coming from medical school had no clue about what business is, moving into there and welcomed there. So it was. The more I progressed into the Lilly and Guidant organizations, the more I returned back to my roots. In other words, clinical research, medical education, and stuff like that. Beginning, it was marketing and sales, but moved on and I was able to build on this, my knowledge. So that's how I progressed there. And I left what became Guidant pretty much a few months before Guidant was acquired by Boston Scientific and Abbott. And I left it also, and that was where I moved to entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said, do I want more of that? Or I've been in a great organization. Do I need to do more? Do I need to go to another one, which is I'm going to be always comparing to what Lilly was and what. So I said, no, let's. I think I have learned enough now to be able to start venturing into into going into entrepreneurship and start building organizations. So that's how the transition became.
Fantastic. You worked in a large corporate environment. So I think this was actually a very good foundation for being an entrepreneur, right? Like in the space that you kind of currently are. Basically, your first company, as per my research, was Celiad, right? So tell us more about Celiad. Like, how did you kind of start Celiad?
So your career is often made by the people you encounter during your work. And when the first thing that happened after Guidant Lilly is I joined someone that was my competitor at Medtronic. I was at Guidant, he was at Medtronic, but we respected each other quite a lot. And he had launched an incubator, if you want, called MedPol, and he asked me to join him as a partner in this incubator. Incubator was basically trying to help U.S. companies or new companies, but mostly U.S. companies, establish foot in Europe and doing their clinical development for them, their marketing strategies, etc., etc. So I joined him and joined Michel there. One of the first projects that I got to be in charge of was a company was a couple of researchers that also came from Harvard, the word is small, and that invented cell therapy, which at the time was very odd. Cell therapy at the time, that was the 2000s, were
Very early,
very, very,
formative
very
years.
early, very early. So those researchers invented something that could get mesenchymal stem cell to behave, or thought to behave, like cardiac progenitor cells. And that was work that was done at Mayo Clinic by Dr. Befar and Dr. Terzik, Professor Terzik. And we developed so that became what was the precursor of Celiad, which was called Cardio 3 Biosciences. So put a team together. So from being one of the company that we incubated, it became my full-time job. So this is where I jumped into becoming the CEO of a new venture called Cardio 3 Biosciences. We went through phase 1, 2, 2 and 3 studies, and we listed in Europe, Euronext for that company. And then way before getting the results of the phase 3, I was saying to myself, do we want to be standing on one leg, or should we have a second pillar in case mesenchymal cells don't pan out, the results don't pan out? Because, when you do phase 3 studies, 1 out of 2 fail.
Absolutely.
Being a small company, you cannot afford that if you want to sustain it for the longer term. So I had, one of my team member called George Rawadi had scouted a CAR T, which again was very, very novel at the time. CAR Ts it wasn't yet at the time where the results of Carl June and other were known. So we scouted a CAR T coming from Dartmouth using NKG2D receptor on the T cell, transduced on the T cell. So we added that second leg to what was then Cardio 3 Biosciences. And we changed the name for it to become Celiad because we had more than cardiac for obvious reasons. And then, so we acquired this and we started developing it. And then we had, unfortunately, a negative outcome in the cardiology work. So we focused 100% of the company onto the oncology and NKG2D based CAR T. So that's the story of Celiad.
So Christian, just a small interruption here. So it is, in the hindsight, of course, it looks very easy, right? And you said, you kind of were working in the incubator and somebody bought this idea of transforming mesenchymal stem cells into cardiac cells. But, forming a company is a big task, especially when it comes to funding and running day-to-day businesses. Another question, are you from a very rich background, or you raised capital, or you bootstrapped? How did the source of funding came to you? That's question number one. Yes.
I'm not from a rich family at all. My family, yes, I had a father who was an entrepreneur, but most of his businesses were destroyed during the war. So no, I'm not from a rich family at all. And yes, we had to raise capital from what is typically called at the beginning of a venture like that in Europe in particular. You raise it from what is called the 3 Fs, family, foods, and you raise that and you start. And that's one of the lessons that I have took over to Capstan when I built Capstan. It's not the right way to start a company. Well, if you can avoid it, that's not the best way to start a company. Now, maybe a small interruption in this. I want to be humble about this because I learned a lot from Celiad, and I did the exact opposite when I built Capstan on many things. I carried over some of the things that we did well, but some of the things that I felt we didn't do well, I did the exact opposite when I built Capstan. Having said that, and I thought that was the recipe for success, we had to be different. We had to do something that was working better. One of my colleagues at Celiad built another company called Biotech, which basically replicated what Celiad did, which basically raising money from family, fools, and friends, and then getting a bit of venture capital in. And he sold Biotech, at $1.5 billion, 1.1 billion euro a few years later. So yes, the learnings, I didn't do the same, and we succeeded. He did not exactly the same, but he did some of the things the same, and he succeeded. So what is the recipe for being a successful venture? I don't know.
So there's no one recipe.
There is no one recipe, and most of it is luck. You have also to be humble about it. Not all of it is in our control.
No, that's a fantastic thing that you said that, it's like, of course, I mean, it's said that, chance favors the prepared mind. So, of course, luck will play a role, but then, you have to take that chance.
Of course.
And you have So, and I think you or your friend, they both took a chance and they both are like successful in their
So
ventures.
both of us left. Well, I left Celiad right before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and Jean-Pierre was let go. Well, I was CEO. I was supposed to stay there on the board, bootstrapped the new CEO to take over from me because I was really worn down at that time. It was
Mm-hmm.
15 years of hard work, always fighting against the stream, etc. So I had hired CFO from the
Mm-hmm.
US, Filippo Petti, and I groomed him to become my successor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stepped out of my role as CEO and positioned him as the CEO in replacement. I was intending to stay on the board to coach him further because
Mm-hmm.
at the time the board of Celiad had very capable people, but not biotech specialists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another learning I had is as staying on the board, I could see what people were doing wrong and what people were doing right. And I was trying to resist things that didn't go in the direction that I thought should go. And that basically came in the way of the new CEO to actually take his full role and full position. So at one point I said, look, you can't have two CEOs in a company. So I have to step out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did step out. Unfortunately, the future didn't pan out as I would have hoped it would, but I
Mm-hmm.
stepped out at that time. And
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Pierre, who was my COO, stepped out 6 or 9 months later and started his venture. I stopped for basically 9 months. I had to recover a bit. And then again, I tell you all about the relationships of things. One of the physician that I worked with in the cardiac field in
Mm-hmm.
France, called Philippe Ménacher, he's the head of cardiac surgery in Pompidou Hospital in Paris. He came to me on one day and he told me, "Have you read this paper from Nature, in Nature, that talks about fibrosis and heart disease?" And I said, "No." So he gave me the paper. I read it. I said, "Do you think there is something in there?" He said, "Well, cardiac disease is difficult. You have to do very large studies. Raising money is complicated. The drugs are already working pretty well, etc., etc." But I said, "Well, however, the team involved in that research paper were Carl June, were Hege Gaginian, were people I had a lot of respect for, really a lot of respect for,
Mm-hmm.
and that weren't friends at the time, but they were acquaintances, if you want."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Well, let me dig a bit more into it. I'm going to dig." And I was hoping that the Celiad was going to be successful, even if I was going to be out. So I said, "I don't need to work. We'll see if that's going to work out or not." I'm curious. I'm scientifically curious about this. So I had the acquaintances, but I didn't have the proximity to some of those people. I asked a friend of mine, which you may know, Osman. I'll come back to him. Anyway, so he was
Mm-hmm.
the head of Team Unity at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
he was, which was a spin out of Penn. I said, "Os, can you please introduce me back to Carl, Bruce Levine, all people very famous in the CAR T field? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's something I'd like to do with them. I'd like to chat about with them." And that's how Capstan, at the time was called TFIB, was born. We put our heads together
Mm-hmm.
and saying, and TFIB, let's call it by what it was called at the
Mm-hmm.
time, was originally focused on using CAR T cells to go after fibrosis, which was incredibly timely considering the fact that COVID was creating a lot of fibrosis, both in the heart or in the lungs and stuff like that. And that was
Mm-hmm.
the long COVID thing. So that's how it all started. So one of your questions about leadership, one of the person that I had, that had enormous influence in all this is a gentleman called Jonathan Epstein. And
Jonathan Epstein.
Epstein. And John was at the time vice dean of research or dean of research, vice dean of the medical school at Penn.
Mm-hmm.
And John said, "Look, let's do this venture, but we're going to do this with everyone involved in this research. And everyone involved in that research was people specialized in fibrosis, Hélène Puré, Steve Albelda, people specialized in CAR-T, which is Carl June and Bruce Levine, me, John Epstein, in which most of the work was done in my lab, Haig, who was the young researcher that did most of that research. And we're going to involve someone that is doing very, very early stuff in LNP and trying to do in vivo CAR-T. We don't know if it's going to pan out, but let's involve him in that group as well. So Drew Weissman came in as well in the group as one of our co-founders. So this is a group of 7 co-founders saying, let's do cardiac fibrosis, fibrosis-based CAR-Ts. That's new frontier. And we had someone there doing LNPs and mRNA, and we didn't know really what we're gonna do with him. Come up, but he was in the group. And while we were setting up TFib, his research with Haig again was, okay, we can do this cardiac fibrosis CAR-T, but we can do them in vivo. So this is how it all started, is basically Drew and Haig did research that showed that we could get the same data using in the fibrosis field, using in vivo CAR-T versus ex vivo CAR-T.
Fantastic.
And that's how Capstan was born.
No, this is amazing story. Now moving back, because you spent significant time at Celiad and you said you learned a few things like, that you didn't want to repeat again. And this is, also like very common in terms of like, so you were the founder of Celiad, right? And when you found a company, it's very hard to let it go. But that said, I've seen like when investors come on board, it's always the founder CEO who's kind of, who's won out or whatever, they have differences. And then they say, okay, you take your company, I'll do something else, because you have that potential always inside you. So tell us in a more like, tell us the honest story. How did it happen and why you were like worn out? Because, worn out, because I think it was your baby, right?
Celiad.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
However, I didn't feel at all that I should leave completely. I felt I should leave partially and remain on the board and help the company progress. To be frank, that's one of my big
trends, I would say.
Well, I don't know. I'm bitter about what Celiad has become after I left, to be frank, because it's a company I founded. Many investors trusted us, whether it is public investors, mom and pop, and people putting their money into Celiad. And I feel really, really bad about what Celiad has become. I tried to reach back to Celiad and try to see, well, because I had some other ideas, let's try to do something, etc. But the train has passed and they have new leadership and they're progressing on their side. But you're right, that's something that is still for me a bit of a wound, if you want, that cannot be healed.
And what were your learnings? Because you're mentioning that, you learned something that you wouldn't want to replicate with Capstan. So tell us those learnings.
Celiad was built first on technologies that were interesting for sure, but none of them, they came from Mayo Clinic and Dartmouth, etc. But we didn't have the leadership researchers in Celiad that we had in Capstan. I don't want to be to sound too obnoxious about some, because some of them are great people. I mean, Andre and Atta and all of that, they're great people. But at Penn, the people I worked with invented CAR-Ts, They were really,
they were
really
the pioneers.
They're really, really the pioneers. And they were successful. So the first thing that we didn't do, that we did better at Capstan, not that we didn't do it at Celiad, that we did better at Capstan, is get a group of founders that were really at the very, very
forefront of
forefront of the therapies that we were developing. That's the first thing we did. The second thing we did is we struggled at Celiad. Celiad could have been successful also if we would have been able to raise more money than we did, because instead of doing in the cardiac field a 300 patient study, we could have done a 600 patient study, and the study may have been positive because the trends were there, but we didn't have statistical significance. So we could have, if we had more money, more deep pockets, we could have made it more successful from a design perspective. So that's the second thing I learned, is that at Capstan, I'm not going to start with mom and pop's money. I'm going to start with big money, deep-pocketed investors, which not only brought money, to be frank, they also brought a lot of knowledge and relationships and all of that. So it's not only the depth of money, it's also the knowledge behind the money that is important. But also, it's building a team that is not only made of friends, it's bringing people that have done it before, that are also experts in their field. Celiad was in Belgium. We had our natural environment around us. We had people that were good. But when we hired the Capstan, I got Adrian Bott with me, who was the guy who spearheaded the first CSO role at Kite. I had Priya Karmali, who was the person that was spearheading the LNPs. So I had really the top of the crop. I mean, we really had the best ever people.
Wow.
And we did that. I involved them before we raised the money. It was COVID time, so people were working at home. And most of them said, look, I need you guys to pitch with me because I'm not the expert. You are the expert. I'm here to help you be successful. I'm not here to be successful alone. And we pitched together to investors. And obviously, when you get to investors and you have Carl, Drew, John on one side, on the founder's side, and we have Adrian, Priya, and others people, and on the management side, they will take your calls. They will take your calls, and you have a chance to convince them. So that's how it happened, actually. And
this is fantastic because I think you mentioned that you wanted to be on the board of Celiad because you saw that there's investors and good people, but they lacked this scientific know-how, like on the people who were was either the CEO or the board members, they lacked this. And I have seen that, it can be very difficult for a non-scientific CEO, especially at the early stages of company, to manage a very science-driven company. And I think you had same feelings, and that is why you bought these top-notch people from the top-notch research labs. But Christian, are you a great influencer, persuader? How did you persuade everyone to come together? Because I mean, you are not a scientist yourself. You're okay, you have some medical background, but you are not the scientist, right? So how did you go about it?
Well, it started with a group of founders, to be frank. I mean, without them, this would not have happened. If you have Carl on your founder side, and John and Haig and others, then Adrian will listen, and he will. He said, well, there is merit in that. And Priya would listen, and she would say there is merit in that. So it all started with the initial thing, let's work this together. This is not going to be a Christian venture. This is going to be a Christian Homsy venture. It's going to be a UPenn spin out, and it's a spin out that has never been seen before. I mean, you never had, one breakthrough prize winner, one Nobel Prize winner. You don't have that, right? I mean, in any venture. And this was basically the key to open the door of getting first the right people to join the team, and getting VCs to listen. If I would have pitched, and I tried to start the company, to be frank, I tried to start a company in Europe. I pitched to a number of VCs in Europe that all declined, despite the group of investors.
This I've heard repeatedly, that, raising capital in Europe is quite different than raising capital in the US, and you're just confirming it. And tell us your experience, exactly on what was the difference in terms of raising capital. Yeah.
There's two things. I mean, it's really a world of difference. People don't, because before I did it in the US, I knew it was different, but I didn't realize how different it was. And a couple of things. First, the amount of money that is available is way, 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 way bigger. which means that the funds that basically are involved into your venture have expertise because they can hire expertise. They have so much money, they can hire expertise that is unique, really, really unique. In Europe, you have relatively large funds, the best ones, relatively large funds, but they're not at all at the scale that the people have that the amount of money that funds have in the US. So therefore, their expertise is way lower. When you discuss with funds in the US, it becomes, well, not all funds, the funds that I talk to, it becomes a discussion, a partnership. I mean, they bring ideas, you bring ideas, and you have a better outcome at the end. In Europe, it's about more, let me show you I'm smarter than you are. That's how the funds react to what you're presenting. So they are, and they're not. They really are not. And so it's become a pissing contest more than anything else, to be frank. And it's not positive. It's not positive. It's not. Now there are great successes in Europe as well. Let's not demean that. But in general, if you take the general mood between Europe and the US, in US you have more money and you have more expertise than what you have in Europe. That's for sure.
Amazing. Yeah, no, you have just confirmed this because I listen this on a very regular basis about these differences. So Christian, is it correct for me to say that, that Nature paper that you received from your friend was basically the primary motivator for you to start
Yes.
Capstan?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it was.
So one Nature paper can kind of give an idea to a whole venture. This is amazing. So, now coming to Capstan's
because
vision.
the group, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Manish, but the folks at Penn had tried to raise money based on the outcome of that research on their own, and they didn't make it. They couldn't. So it's just the fact that we brought an equity story that made sense beyond just the science. It's important with investors that you bring an equity story that makes sense. So how are they going to make money?
And for our normal audiences, so tell us, what is an equity story? This is a good term, honestly.
Equity story is basically, what company are you building? It's not just what science is in there, but what company you're building. What's your vision for the company? What type of diseases you're going after? How likely is it? What are your competitors? Why does it make sense? Why should I invest in you?
So more larger picture rather than just one cut. Got it. So, coming back now, so Capstan's vision is transforming medicine by, say, in vivo precision engineering of cells. So what does that mean in practical terms?
So, I've been in CAR-Ts forever now, and the issue with CAR-Ts is, it's complicated. It's complicated to manufacture. It's complicated to the logistics. It's complicated for patients. They have to be lymphodepleted before they're treated. There are adverse events in that. It's incredibly expensive. You have to think about, the treatments are north of $300,000-$400,000 per patient. Now, okay, you can justify that maybe for cancer, but even there, I mean, you can't make a big impact with such prices. So the objective of Capstan is to make this whole thing way simpler. Instead of taking cell out of a patient, first you have to take cell out of a patient. You have to send them to a central lab. You have to modify those cells. You have to grow them. You have to ship them back to the hospital. The patient has to be lymphodepleted so the new cells that you inject have space to grow. This whole process is extremely cumbersome, extremely costly. And the goal of Capstan is, instead of doing all this, can you modify the cell in the patient? Instead of in vivo, in the patient. That was the whole idea behind it. And that's what we came up to do. And of course, I mean, serendipity, sometimes it's incredible. I mean, you have LNPs were just in the limelight due to the COVID thing. RNA was in the limelight because of the COVID thing. So all those technologies were just about to become very, very important and very, very critical. So that's how Capstan was born, is bringing all these things together and trying to solve a major problem, which was how to make cells, CAR-T cells, or any type of engineering of cells more feasible, more affordable than what they what they were in ex vivo processes. And I know there was allogenic approaches, many companies, doing allogene therapeutics or whatever, doing allogenic approaches. I never believed that those would be long-term solutions because they also require significant modification challenges and all of that, and they're costly and they have to solve other problems, immunology level problems that doing in vivo wouldn't need to be. I mean, you have to solve problems, but not the problem of that magnitude. So that's what I think. I think basically autologous were necessary at the beginning. Allogenic, I think, is going to be a missed step. So it's not gonna take over. And in vivo, our approach and other approaches, as a biotech or Interius or whatever, other approaches are just going to take over this whole field and change medicine, frankly, in a very significant way.
Fantastic. No, this is so inspiring. So were there like any aha moment in Capstan, like where you said like, okay, no, this particular approach will become a platform and not just a product?
Yes. So the first aha moment is that when we got data from Haig and Drew Weissman lab, where we showed that this was going to work. We saw in mice that was going to work. And that's when we started changing TFIP to Capstan and building Capstan based on that premise, saying, okay, fibrosis is one area, but we could do normal CAR-Ts for oncology. We could do blood monogenic disorders with BCLA11, solving some thalassemia problem or we could go after autoimmune diseases. We could do, so that was basically opening a whole field of opportunities that when we started on TFIB wasn't there. It was way more narrow. And so Haig and me and John came up with this, okay, let's shift this towards a platform versus a product, an in vivo platform versus a product. So that's really something that happened early on, very early on. And this is where the two VCs that were involved in the early part of the company, which are at the time it was Novartis Venture and OrbiMed, and Novartis was Nandita Shangari and OrbiMed was Roy Amariglio. They helped me tremendously to crystallize the idea and also to negotiate with Penn on obtaining the rights, because they had a lever that they didn't have. They had the money. And everybody wanted access to those technologies. And Penn had to choose who they're going to partner with. And we need to be, the VCs I wanted to move forward. The VC said, well, hold on, let's just make it as broad as we can. And they were right. So this is where you see partnership with VCs instead of we're in with you. We're going to help you do this. And that's how it emerged as what Capstan became.
Fantastic. This is amazing. So you're mentioning about the lipid nanoparticles, right? So there are many strategies where, like, apart from lipid nanoparticles, like there are also alternative strategies, right? So why you think the LNPs are the game changer?
Well, first it's synthetic. So it's from a manufacturing perspective, it's way, way, way easier. And they're proven. We know it works. We know it works with RNA. It works. It's behind the curtains. We knew that RNA is by definition not permanent. So you're going to have to redose, you're going to have to re-inject, etc. But I said from the very, very beginning, we need to go after autoimmune diseases. Some of our investors were adamantly against. They wanted to go after oncology. I said, no.
Because it's a big field.
It's autoimmune disease is way larger. It's way bigger. Way, way bigger. But they were scared of autoimmune disease because they said that's going to take a lot of time to develop, etc. I said, no. Look at Argenx, for example, that developed for myasthenia gravis, a product from 300 patient studies. So you don't need large studies. But they were formatted, oncology. And that's one of the butt heads that we had with the investors saying, saying, no, I want to go autoimmune. And they basically decided, no, when they invest out so much money, they take control of the company. Let's be clear about that. They take control of the company and they basically impose on you what they want to do. So they brought in, when we had that disagreement together, they brought in a CEO that they have, one of them actually, one of the investors, I'm not going to mention who because that becomes sensitive. But one of the investors said, okay, I want to replace Christian with a CEO that has worked for me in the past, that has been very successful in the past. And that's why they brought Laura in. Laura is a great person. I interviewed her. She's a great person. I was happy for her to take over. I wasn't planning to stay for very long anyway. Didn't want to stay in the US anyway. And having a US-based CEO was good. But you see, this is where the dynamics between investors and management sometimes become challenging. Anyway, that's how.
And what was the dynamics? I want to listen more to it because, you know, on one side you praised investors a lot, but what is the dynamics here? Because you were the founding CEO. You know, what was the issue with the dynamics when everything was, it sounds that everything was going great.
Well, I mean, we had some disagreements. We had some disagreements about the field. I don't want to go into the details of what happened, but there was one particular investors in which there were, you know, serious disagreements with on a number of things, and they have the money. And as I was not going to stay for very long anyway, you know, that was fine. I have to say that most of the investors, with the exception of one, were very gracious to me.
They believed in your idea clearly because they invested.
In my idea. You know, I left with a very comfortable package, keeping a lot of my shares. So I have nothing but good things to say about most of them. And frankly, Capstan would not be there if it wasn't for Novartis and OrbiMed at the beginning and RA Capital after that. But that's how it is, you know. You have to understand. That's one of the things I think questions you had is you have to understand when you're the hammer and when you're the nail, right? And you have at one point to say, okay, fine, let me do the best of the situation and move on, and for the best of the company, because I think Laura is an incredible leader, and the fact that she has been able to do all this, maybe I wouldn't have been able to. There's no bad feeling about that at all, contrary to Celiad, where there is some resentment, but here there is no bad feeling at all. I mean, it was for the best of the company at the end of the day.
Oh, fantastic. I know like you are not the current CEO now, but I would still like to know about this AbbVie acquisition. What do you know like as an external person? Because you would be in touch with Laura. So what's the story? How did this whole AbbVie acquisition came in place? Because this was huge.
Yeah, I mean, there is public information I can talk about, but there is nothing. I wouldn't be able. First, I wouldn't know, and second, I wouldn't be able to say anything that is not public. So the AbbVie acquisition came basically unexpectedly. I mean, we didn't expect to get an offer that early in the process. And then the story is the bank got involved and we got other offers, and that's how it came about. AbbVie, I mean, what I can tell you is that AbbVie was interested in getting. So when I was at the helm, I did a seed round of $63 million, and then I did a Series A of $102 million. And that Series A we had mostly was subscribed by the existing investors and by 4 pharma companies. AbbVie wanted to get into that stage. I had good discussions with them. I liked them, and they couldn't. The investors said, no, we're going to cap the amount we raised to 102. You're not going to get more. And AbbVie wasn't in, interestingly enough. But we had four other pharma companies, and those I expected, you know, I'm not an insider, so I don't know what happened, but I expected that one of those 4 pharma companies were going to show up and acquire it because they had insider knowledge of what was happening. And it was good to have 4 and not 1 so that you have some leverage.
They can compete, yeah.
But then we had a 5th one that came in and did the deal.
Wow. So how rich you became, Christian? I know it's not the best question to ask, but
I'm comfortable enough.
Fantastic. So, I mean, you know, I think this podcast is all about the career insights and, all about, the leadership lessons that you can give to other aspiring founders. So, Christian, looking back in all these years when you were like young medico, figuring out what to do, how do you remember those stories and what would be your advice to the, upcoming entrepreneurs?
Well, first you have to believe in your dreams, for sure.
Did you dream of this? Like, what was your dream in the beginning? Or does dream
When?
changes with
Yeah,
time?
dream changes. Dream changes, dreams evolve. But when you have, when I started Capstan, I didn't know if it was going to be successful at all. But I knew I had put all the ingredients for it to be successful. Good, smart money, a lot of money, smart founders, smart science, incredible management team. So I've put all the ingredients in place. Was it going to work or not? Who knows? At the end of the day, science is science. It fails more often than it succeeds. But my dream was, I want to be able to have a CAR-T injected in India, in China. Well, China is a rich country now, but in countries where they wouldn't be able to afford 400,000 price tag. I want to be able to treat patients. I want to be able to, I want this company to be able to have an influence beyond the US market, the US centric market. I want to be able to provide the opportunity for patients to receive a treatment that they wouldn't be able to receive otherwise. And if you believe in this and you pursue your dream, your goal unrelentlessly, you have more chances of succeeding than not.
And Christian, so perhaps I did not phrase my question correctly, and sorry for that. But my thing was like, were you motivated by money or the fun of it in the beginning, looking back?
I was motivated by a Capstan, you mean?
No, at
Yeah.
because
In general.
you were a medical professional, you were already, you were allowed to treat patients. Of course, it became boring, but there's like so much respect that a medical doctor has in society because what was your motivation? So one thing was, of course, it was like boredom. I totally understand that. But goal to start a business or something like that. Primarily, many times it's driven just by money, for example.
Well, it was part of it because I grew up in a family. Not I grew up. After the war, my family didn't have much money, so that was part of it. I didn't want to end up like my parents did. Me or their offsprings to help them. I wanted to be independent. That was, you can't say that this is the main motivation. The main motivation for me was curiosity and the capacity to do novel things, interesting things. I want to wake up in the morning and do something that excites me, that triggers me. That's very important. Very important.
So, no, and thank you for being so honest that you said that, yes, partially we are all driven by money and money is also a great motivator. But at the end of the day, how much money we all need, so
Exactly.
It's like, and after that, it's all. So what motivates you now? Now that you are like more comfortable, more rich, what motivates you now?
I have more money that I'll be able to spend in the rest of my life and my children will be able to spend the rest of my life. So that's not anymore a motivator.
Exactly.
I was motivated first by the legacy, the fact that you're linked. My name is linked now to something that is going to hopefully change the way medicine is practiced. So that's going to say it's egoistic. It's it's about ego.
No, I think it's
ego. It's very, and that's true partially, to be frank. But it's lasting. It's lasting impact on humans at the end of the day. It sounds very grandiose, but at a very humble level, I mean, even if your name is not there, the fact that you've done it, that you've helped add a brick to the treatment of patients that is going to be changing the landscape permanently, even if you're not attached to your particular name, your family know, your friends know that you've been part of that, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
No, fantastic. And what's your opinion? So the other night I was watching a movie called Joy, and I highly recommend you because that was how the birth of IVF took place, in vitro fertilization. And it was so interesting that how relentless, so sometimes the whole society, everything comes against you, and you have an idea that you're kind of really passionate about and you want to do that. And I think that is not just seen in the scientist, but I have at least seen that, a lot of entrepreneurs are also like that. Like, they kind of, no matter how much setback they have, they're very resilient. Um, so how much did resilience played a role? Like, I'm sure like this journey wouldn't be very smooth, Christian, for you. So tell us more about the challenges you faced and how did you overcome all those things?
Manish, it starts from my childhood. I mean, I'm a single child that needs some resilience. You have to go through a war to understand what resilience means. You have to start in a new country to understand what resilience means. You have to create a new friendship, but none of this. So resilience is important, but you cannot be resilient on your own. You have to have a family around you. You have to have friends that you can count on. You have people that you can go and cry with.
Absolutely.
Resilience is all about the what enables you to be resilient. Yes, you need to be, absolutely, but also one shouldn't overthink it, because yes, we hear about the successes, but how many resilient people have failed? How many have pursued something that didn't work? So we are there because we build on the shoulders of people that have failed so many times. And we're lucky.
Fantastic. No.
And we're lucky, but we have to be grateful for people that have tried and didn't make it, because that's how we learn. That's how we move forward.
No, I think this is a great statement that, and that shows how humble you are, because this should be like really a tagline that, a lot of successes are actually built on the shoulders of people who fail or who dare to fail. Because
Exactly.
of course, many a times we forget, because people have failed or whatever. But then success also needs a lot of failure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Christian, like on practical terms, like what would you advise like for young founders who want to kind of pursue a path like you? Because most of our listeners are biotechy scientists who wants to come into entrepreneurship, for example.
Well, again, it depends if you're in Europe or in the US, but in general terms, shoot for the stars and land on the moon, right? Be bold. Be bold. Be bold. Try and have a vision. Have a vision and pursue that vision. Be realistic at the same time. You're not going to change the world in one day, and you're not going to change it alone. So be realistic. Make sure you have people around you that can help you, both on a personal level but also professionally. And surround yourself with people that can help you avoid the mistakes that they have done. You're going to do your own mistakes anyway, but still try to learn from the experience of others. That's about it. It's all about getting the right people.
Fantastic. So now Christian, at this stage, how's your like day life looks like, and what's next? I am sure there's a lot of things that is cooking in your brain. So tell us more about the outlook.
So Capstan was built on some of the shortcomings that Celiad had. And I'm working on some ideas of what maybe the shortcomings of Capstan, and what can I do is there something that I can build that can help build, not build it by itself, that can go a step further. I'm always going to be active. I'm always going to try to do stuff. Whether it's going to work or not, who knows? But that's what I'm working on. I'm working on the new frontiers and trying to see if something could emerge from that. And I'm seeing hundreds of ideas and projects, not hundreds, tens of, and I hope that one of them will emerge. We'll see.
Fantastic. No, I was asking this very intentionally, Christian, because, remember the first time I met you, you mentioned this. And normally, when people get rich and, their dream is to retire on the beach and stuff. But I just wanted to highlight that, some people are so driven that, once they become comfortable, they are more motivated. And tell us more about this, like.
Manish, remember I told you when I stopped medicine because I was getting bored? I'm not going to be bored now. Who knows? Staying on the beach, I've done that. Sailed, I've done that. Yeah, sure. But how much of that you can do without getting bored again? So just keep your mind flowing and get new ideas. And there is that. Then there is obviously the family and all of that, helping them
Mhm.
succeed as well. But no, 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 never, never, never stop. And that's basically dying the first time, right?
No, that's fantastic. So tell us the fun side, Christian. So what do you do for leisure when you want to kind of relax a bit and so what do you do like as a hobby?
I have many hobbies, thankfully. I like to woodcraft. I like
Hmm.
to sail. I like to ski. I like to especially take care of my grandchildren.
Hmm. And how many of them are there? Like how many
I have
grandchildren?
two. I have the eldest one, which is 5 years old now. Is Hella. She's a girl, and she's the daughter of my eldest son, Kareem.
Hmm.
And I have Elias, who's the son of my younger son, who's
Hmm.
6 months old.
Wow.
So we're busy. My wife and I are busy.
And who do you see? Like, do you even think of like, okay, no, they have to kind of carry your legacy or in terms of that? Because many entrepreneurial families, they have kind of, oh no, somebody should carry my legacy. How do you view that?
No, my family. I'm grateful that all of them are successful in
Hmm.
their own way. My eldest son is a cardiac surgeon.
Hmm.
My second one is in strategy, and the youngest one is in now moving into healthcare. So they're all successful. They all have nice families, great daughters-in-law. So all of that is doing fine. Legacy, from a legacy perspective, you know, they have the means to do whatever they want now. So the question is, what are they going to do with it? And let's try to see if we can prolong that for future generations and see how we can do there. But mostly frankly, it's about very humbly, again, coaching young generations, entrepreneurs, scientists that want to launch their business, friends that want to do that. And how can I help them, and how can I help them? That's mostly what I'm interested in.
Fantastic. So now we'll come to this a bit fun round that we have. We call it rapid fire round. So we'll ask you a few questions and you have to answer that without thinking much. Very light.
Okay.
All right. So a book that changed your thinking.
So many.
Tell a few. Yeah, tell a few.
Recently, I read The Engineers of Chaos,
Hmm.
which is a great book about how this whole situation today with social media and all of that are changing society, and
Hmm.
how is that impacting the politics, the economy, and all of that. So that's the latest one I can point at.
Fantastic. So emerging tech outside of biotech that you're excited about.
Everybody will tell you AI. I'm not excited about AI at all. I'm scared about AI. I'm not excited about AI.
Yes.
Scared about it because I'm an old elephant, so maybe that's why I'm scared about
No, but I mean
it.
there are like even the anybody would be scared, because with good comes also the evil. So rightly so.
Exactly. No, I won't talk about technology. I think they're technology, but ventures like still the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all of those things. That's where I think some of it would be. What I'm interested in is now trying to can we help influence younger generations about what we were 40 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, which is critical thinking, debating, not
Hmm.
throwing anathems at each other, just debating openly, being inspired by people that did great things and not by people that did a lot of money and became billionaires out of crypto investing. That's the type of thing I'm
No, it makes sense because it's like I mean these days you see the TikTok stars making much money than a scientist, persevering in a lab. So
or a
of course,
nurse
I mean,
or a nurse or a
or
physician or whatever who brings so much more to society.
no, I absolutely understand that. Yes. All right. So moving next, coffee, tea, or neither.
T.
Fantastic. Most common myth about biotech.
What is the most common myth about biotech is that you're in to make a quick buck and leave.
Yes, absolutely. Most inspiring leader for you. past or present?
I'm going to point at two, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Currently, I would say Jonathan Epstein, who's the dean of the medical faculty at Penn, is the person that taught me without teaching anything, just by example, what a great leader is. So bringing people together, making them work together, still being very, very assertive about things, but doing it in a way that was that. So that's currently probably the person that I admire most. In the past, it's Nelson Mandela for sure. That's an incredible character for me. And his ability to forgive, his ability to bring people together again, which is one common theme that I have.
Yes.
That's who I would point at.
No, fantastic. And Christian, like, if you weren't in biotech, what would you be doing?
Medicine.
Yeah. If you weren't bored there, yes.
Closing the circle.
Yeah. And one goal that you are still chasing?
Trying to influence society, trying to bridge between different opinions. That's what I'm trying to influence society in a positive way. But that's a never-ending goal and hard things to do. But that's what I'm trying to chase.
Fantastic. And so now we have reached the closing, but one question I have started asking people, especially who have a lot of experience under their belt. So what advice would you give to your 30 years younger Christian, so looking back?
Patience.
So you were not necessarily the most patient guy, or?
I wasn't patient at all. And I'm still not. I want to mold things into, and you have sometimes to let time do its job. And you can't change someone's mind. You can influence someone for him or her to change their own mind without you being involved in that. So that just takes a lot of patience, a lot of humility, and that's
fantastic. So Christian, thank you so much for your time to come and talk to me, and it has been fantastic. And to the audience of Biology Career Insights, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and we see you soon again in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Christian. Bye. Bye.